welcome to episode 11 of Revamped. I hope you all are having a wonderful week. It is midweek as always. Happy Wednesday. You know, I was never really big on Halloween. Maybe when I was younger, I loved dressing up as like different Avengers heroes or like Power Rangers and stuff. But getting older, what I do really enjoy about Halloween is sitting around and telling scary stories and watching scary movies. That, for sure, is my favorite part about Halloween. And since it's around the corner, do I have a story to tell you? Now, if you are new to Revamped, hi, this is a podcast designed to help you with photography and videography tips and tricks, to also discuss board games, and to also talk about some interesting stories, which is what we are going to dive into today. So my parents are huge on camping. They love camping. They're really, really big outdoorsy people. And of course, naturally, they would take me along when we go camping together, especially when we were little. Now that we're much older, it's much harder, obviously, with everyone's schedules and life, of course. But when we were younger, I would say maybe starting around like 2, 3, maybe even 5 years old, they would take me out camping to Lake Mead, Lake Mojave, and Lake Havasu, which is all around like the Nevada, Arizona area. Super hot, but we loved it. We loved swimming. We just loved being outdoors and campfires and everything associated with camping. We just loved it. I loved it too, especially. And before, my dad had a green Astro van. It was a minivan. We just packed all of us in there. No boat or anything. So we just took the van out, found a camping spot, and we just had a great time. Eventually, though, my dad ended up getting a boat, and we ended up going to this one lake called Lake Havasu. So the reason why we went there is to not only test drive my dad's new boat, but my dad also had a bunch of camping friends as well, and they always told him to go to Lake Havasu. And one of our friends in particular, or my dad's friends at least, was Uncle Ian. In Khmer, or in the Cambodian language, we would call him Bu Ian, which is the same thing as Uncle Ian. Now, Uncle Ian was super, super fearless. Like, both he and my dad put together, you have the fearless duo here. They're not scared of anything at all. Especially Uncle Ian. Uncle Ian is like, not only is he fearless, but he was also very daredevil-y. He would do a lot of like crazy things. So here we are. I'm around 8, 9 years old now. A bit more of a, quote, experienced camper. I know what to expect. I know what to do. We load up the car, which was a Tahoe, which actually my dad still has to this day. And then my mom would always take care of packing the car, so she would always get like the rice ready, the dry fish ready, stuff that's just easy to cook. And the kids, on the other hand, me and a couple of my cousins, would get all of our water toys together. We have brand new water toys, goggles, snorkeling gear, some blow up floaties and stuff, a bunch of random things. Threw in the car and we drove off to Lake Havasu, which is about a 6-hour drive from here. So we left in the morning. We got there around 2, 3 afternoon, midday, super hot outside. And what's really nice about Lake Havasu, I don't know about now, but at least before, we can drive directly to the water, straight to the water, and just drop off the boat, and the dock is right there, so we can easily load our stuff, and just go. And we drive off to the first camping spot that we see, which is directly across. And I would say it was a 5 to 10 minute boat drive from the dock side to the other side of the lake. And mind you, Lake Havasu is huge. It's a huge open river. But the camping spot that we found, it was actually, I still remember, I think it was spot number 1. I think all my dad's friends just told him that the best spot was camping spot number 1, which was literally right across the lake, which was really nice. And by nice, we meant it was a flat open area. We had a couple of trees for us to put tents by, so it wasn't too hot. But other than that, there's no restrooms, no sink, there's no running water. It's just a flat open field. The only man-made thing that was done was maybe, I think there were bricks that were stacked right along the shore, just to make some kind of elevation between the water and the campsite. That was it. That was the only part that was, quote, man-made. You know, it's the first time there. We have no idea what to expect, but we know that it's super nice. There's nothing weird about the place, right? So then we unloaded all our gear, sleeping bags, and the food. It was me, my parents, 2 of my cousins, and myself. So that made about 6 people. 6 people, empty spot, super quiet. What could go wrong? So before doing anything else, we set up 3 different tents before it got too dark. And then we had a giant bag of rice we just put right on the floor. We also had this giant top of our head since it was super hot. And of course, it provided some nice shade. My dad started fishing. He casted out 3 or 4 fishing poles and kind of just let it sit there while my mom was cooking. And of course, us being kids, we just jumped in the water. You know, being kids didn't even matter because even to this day, I would just jump in the water right away. So here we are with all of our little mini flashlights, and we're eating dinner on the campfire: rice, sausage, eggs, dried fish, throw some soy sauce in there. That was our typical camping meal. And then after we finished eating, weird things started happening. All of a sudden, the wind just picks up out of nowhere. It was a completely sunny day, no clouds, not even a breeze. It was super dry, just quiet. And then the wind just picks up conveniently. And it was a pretty strong wind too. It blew our tarp down, our tents were flying, so we had to put rocks in each corner of the tent We had to nail it down. We actually had to bring the whole tarp down and just have it cover like part of the ground. That's it. We just brought all the poles down. Tarp was just covering a bag of rice. So even us being like a very small group in a pretty open area, we weren't really scared. You know, weather is variable. We were used to it by now. I didn't think of it too much. Not a big deal. So the wind just goes on for about an hour. It's just howling and howling. We're just waiting for it to stop, sitting in our tents. Until finally it just dies down. So only my dad is outside because it's my dad. So my dad just outside. He's fishing still. And things just go quiet. It's about 8 or 9 o'clock. Next thing you know, my dad starts catching a lot of fish. He caught 6 catfish back to back to back. So we're having a good time just helping him net the fish, and I was playing around with my dad's camcorder. I don't know if I even got any footage at night because it was so dark, but who would have known that would have been a sign for me to make videos later on like this in the future. So my dad catches fish back to back, a lot of catfish, and we just put it on a stringer. And in the campsite, like I told you earlier, we can see the dock right across from our shore. But then there's also a large set of like bushes and shrubbery to the left of us, and then there's another inlet. So if you were to picture our campsite, it's a big open circle, but then we have 2 open areas that reaches the water directly. One is straight from the dock, so then you can see the dock directly, and then we have some shrubbery to the left of that, which makes that corner. And to the left of the shrubbery is where we parked the boat. It was anchored over there because there's a little inlet over there, so there's no wind. Now, if you've ever been fishing before, it's kind of like golden hour and blue hour for photography. There's just this really hot hour when fish just bite nonstop, and then they just stop. Catfish usually aren't like that because they're bottom dwellers, but more so like stripers or bluegill, usually they'll have like a 1 hour hotspot. So the fish biting dies down, and all of a sudden we start hearing some really strange noises that none of us have heard before. We had no idea what that sound was. We had no idea where it was coming from because it just sounded like it was everywhere. And it wasn't super loud, but it was enough to ring in your ear. And you know, us being kids, we have wild imaginations. We had no idea what it was. But what it did sound like was like someone was taking a tool or a knife and just scraping it back and forth across a metal fence. Actually, just thinking about it, I feel chills down my spine. I remember the fear that was instilled in me back when I was 8. And of course, we would ask my parents, and they would lie and make up something like, oh, it's just pelicans or something. It's like, okay. So that sound would go in and out. Sometimes we'd hear it, and sometimes it's just dead silent. But then here we are, just sitting along the shore, just looking at the stars, looking at my dad fish, looking at the pitch black water. And then in the distance, where my dad is kind of casting his fishing line, he points in the distance. And he looks for a second, kind of just squints. He doesn't say anything at first. And all of a sudden, he's just like, what is that? So all of us, including my mom, who is extremely scared of everything, we kind of just stare off in distance. And my mom just goes, oh my God. And she just kind of dead silent because she doesn't want to scare us. So then we take like 3 to 5 seconds to just process what exactly we were seeing. And so we have the moon reflecting across the pitch black water. It's super dark, super clear, super reflective. And in the water, kind of just bobbing around, is a head. Like a full-on, it looked like a human head just bobbing across the water. So you see it, so as it floats across the water, you just see the trails it leaves behind. And our jaws just drop because it doesn't look like a freaking ghost. It looks like an actual person just floating across the water. And we're like, what the hell is that? And we just watch it keep swimming, not knowing what the hell it was. So here it was swimming towards the inlet, that little curve that I was talking about, towards the boat. And then we just jump up. My dad just like jumps up with the giant mag light, and here we are following my dad. And for whatever reason, we thought it was gonna be very helpful to just carry stuff with us. So here we are carrying like a rock and some twigs and some giant branches. Not even giant branches, they're like for a kid, what, like 2-3 foot branches? Carrying branches to just arm ourselves with weapons, I guess, as we're running with my dad, just going uphill towards the boat. So my dad runs up to the top of the hill, and here we are chasing him. He's the only one with the flashlight. We don't have any of our lights with us. And all of a sudden, my dad just takes the flashlight and just points it at that floating head, whatever it was, just points it straight at it. And all of a sudden, it just dips down. So then we just freak out because like, oh shoot, what is that? What if it goes under the boat? What if it damages the boat, or who knows what it is? We don't have any idea what it is. What if it just comes on shore and just walks above shore? We have no idea. But then all of a sudden, it just bobs its head out and goes in the reverse direction back towards the docks and open water. So we run towards after it again, towards the fishing line. And we just, for whatever reason, decided to throw rocks at it because that's always a good idea. Obviously, we are light years away from actually hitting whatever it was. And tell me why it was a brilliant idea for us to just throw rocks. I have no idea why we did that. A, what if it got angry and upset, whatever it was, and came towards us? B, what if it was an innocent animal and we actually heard it? And C, I don't think being disrespectful towards a entity was probably the best idea anyway. So what we were thinking, I have no clue. So we're all freaked out except my dad, or at least he doesn't want to show it. And then we just end up sleeping in one tent. But remember, right before we did that, my dad had a string of 6 catfish that he also had tied to a line that we now put next to the boat. So we brushed our teeth, went to bed, freaked out, but eventually we all fell asleep. And the next morning we woke up and my dad's just like, what the hell? So we all woke up, kind of just rushed outside to see what's going on. And the 6 catfish that were on a stringer, all you see were 6 floating heads and just like their spine and just torn up meat, just floating, going back and forth along the shore. So like I said, it's our first time there. We didn't experience any of this over Lake Mead and Lake Mojave and any other lake that we've been to, Lake Tahoe. On top of that, whatever it was, it ate every single one of them. And it picked it apart too because the heads were still there. So automatically, we start thinking about this super scary entity that Cambodian folktales always talk about. And it was called Ap. If any of you are Cambodian, you know what I'm talking about. We all hear different versions of it. It's like a woman with like a lost child that goes around, feeding. It's like a floating head. Either way, it's just a scary, very, very scary entity that eats and sucks blood, or I don't know. It's just scary, okay? And that's the first thing that we thought of. But luckily, later that day, the rest of our family came and Uncle Ian came, so it was just normal after that. There was no weird wind. There was no weird sound. There was no strange floating head bobbing in the water. Why would any of those things show up when more and more people come? Of course they'd be gone. So then a few trips pass by and we don't see anything or hear anything again. Nothing weird. Like we still see rattlesnakes and tarantulas and scorpions and all other very, very dangerous and poisonous things out there. But no floating head. Not for some time. I think not until 4 trips later when we went to a brand new spot. So this spot we called the hill. It was way further down, probably like another 15 minutes away from the first original spot. And it was just a giant hill. There's only one opening where the boat parked. And then you just go straight uphill. And that's where we put all of our tents. And it was super, super beautiful. It was a really nice area. You could see like the sunset. I wish I knew how to take pictures back then. So I can capture some really nice sunsets that you can see from that spot. So my dad, knowing the area a lot more, knew a lot of really good fishing spots. And there was one spot in particular that was really hot. It's a really close by spot to the hill area. And then when we get there, we set up our fishing poles and we're mostly fishing for striper. And then me, I always love fishing for bluegill because they're little tiny fish. And most of the time, unlike the other fish, bluegills, you can see them swimming around. So I thought it was always interesting to be able to see what you're fishing for instead of just blindly casting and hoping for the best. My dad also bought this really cool glowing light stick that you could just plug into like the boat, the cigarette lighter. Is that what it's called? The cigarette lighter, like the typical car plug. You plug it into the boat and then we just have it dangling across in the water. So we turn the boat lights off to save battery and then we have that dangling lamp that I was talking about. But it probably would have been a smart idea for us to plug in that lamp into an external battery. But time has passed since then, of course. So we have one source of light underneath the boat and everyone is fishing from different sides of the boat. We have people in the front, we have us in the back, 3 of us in the back, and then just fishing lines out everywhere. Some are fishing for striper, some are fishing for bluegill like I was. And then we just have that hotspot that I've been talking about. My dad is amazing at fishing, so he's so good when it comes to fishing. He knows exactly what bait to use. He taught me like how to tie the line. He knows everything there is to know about fishing. So whatever I know now is because of him. So what I was using to catch bluegill were like these little mealworms. But eventually I kind of just stopped because I didn't see any more bluegills underneath. And then I started switching over to catching striper. In order to catch striper, we used 2 things, either chicken liver or we used mackerel. So I've been standing the entire time, didn't feel like standing anymore. And I kind of just let my pole sit there with the sinker and line just going straight down underneath the boat, directly underneath the boat with mackerel hanging around. And I sit down, just like I am now, and I let the pole sit there. So I'm sitting there just watching the pole, and a couple others are catching fish still. But then all of a sudden, as I'm watching the top of the fishing pole, it just drags down. And it wasn't like a normal, like, oh, I caught a fish down. No, it was like, this is a heavy fish or something is pulling it really, really strong down to the point where the base of the fishing pole was almost lifting. But automatically just grabbed the pole, yanked it up. But then as soon as I yanked it up, it was super loose. So when that happens, you know that as you're reeling it up, you're not going to get anything. So I reel it up, and my hook is still there, but no bait. So that wasn't strange at all. When you fish, that happens all the time, right? You lose a bait, the hook gets caught against something along the bottom floor of the water. It's a river, so there's always a current flowing, so maybe like some kind of debris or junk just goes along the fishing hook and then it gets caught, you lose the bait, whatever. The only thing that was weird was how hard that pole really yanked up, so it must have been a really, really big fish. But that entire time I was reeling it up, I was still away from the edge of the boat. I was just reeling it just to reel it from inside the boat. And then I peek over to see what was going on. Maybe I could catch a glimpse of whatever was eating my bait. So I look over the side of the boat, and mind you, this is a spot where the lamp was, so I could see direct light. And all I saw was like an aura, like around, like a rim of light. But in the center, it was just pitch black. So then I'm like, huh, that's strange. So I pick up the lamp thinking like something's wrong with half of the bulb or something. But then that shadow just swooshes by. It just swims super fast right off. It was so massive, but there was no fin that I could see. It didn't look like it had a tail or anything. It was just a giant blob, a giant dark blob just swimming off. And then right away I called to my dad, Dad, you see that? I think something's underneath the boat. He comes over, and of course, he's not going to see what I saw. So there's no animal, there's no thing underneath. But I had a feeling, of course, that that was probably the same thing that was at our campsite 4 or 5 years ago. So then now, being a little bit older, I didn't think it was like a spirit or entity or an op or anything. But I thought I saw some kind of lake monster, like Loch Ness monster or something. I don't know. Tell me why Lake Havasu didn't even bother putting out a sign yet of like available creatures and common animals and things that you'll see here. There was no sign like that yet. We knew that there were rattlesnakes and coyotes and tarantulas and scorpions and 3, 4, 5 different kinds of fish. We had no idea what else was there. You know what it was? So we find out later, either from seeing them at the dock or just seeing them in the middle of the day or just randomly coming across them or seeing them finally on a posted sign. It was a seal. A seal. I didn't even know seals live in fresh water. I thought they're only in the ocean. Who would have known that a freaking seal is in the middle of Lake Havasu? Not even a seal, but like seals. And tell me why seals have to have the shape of a human head when they're floating across the water in the middle of the night. And that weird sound, which sounded like a knife scraping across a metal fence. We also find out later, after many, many more years of us kind of just being a little bit more and more fearless, we hiked up to the very top of that hill in the very first camp spot when we went back to the first one. And when you get to the top, there's actually this giant telephone wire pole. So that's exactly what was making that weird scrapey-ish sound that we were hearing from the very first campsite, very first camp trip that we took. So that was our fun little story and conclusion from the trips at Lake Havasu. So Lake Havasu is still one of our favorite places to go. So we haven't gone to Lake Havasu in years, but I would love to go back. They had some kind of outbreak of some kind of shellfish that attaches to the boat, and then that would get clogged in like different drains and whatnot. So since then we haven't gone, but I still love that camping spot. It's one of my favorite places of all time to go to. It's just so much fun. The water's clear, the weather's perfect, boating is fun, camping is fun, just being outdoors. Even though you're with a small group of people and like there's this silence. There's this silence that you only know when you go outside of the city. It's just like this pitch black darkness and silence combined together. That is both amazing, satisfying, creatively inspiring, but also extremely, extremely scary. And now we know exactly what to expect. We know every type of creature there. We know every spot. We know all the little nuances. And of course, being much older and wiser, we know that we can attribute logical explanations to the weird things that we see. So the next time we see a floating head swimming across the water, we know that it's a seal, otter, whatever class of mammals that they were. That's exactly what we saw that night, or at least that's what we think we saw.